My parents had gone out of town for the weekend, a rare moment of peace and privacy. The entire house was mine. I was all set for a quiet, lazy evening until MJ showed up. MJ was my ex-girlfriend. We hadn't spoken in a while, but she just dropped by casually, saying she was in the area and thought of me. Something about her presence always felt slightly reckless. Bold smile, unpredictable moves. That's probably why we didn't last. But that night, it felt like the old days. We ended up hanging out near the pool, talking about nothing and everything. At one point, she jokingly said, "Let's go skinny dipping, for old time's sake." I laughed it off at first, but she was already slipping into the water. In a moment of careless nostalgia, I joined her. The pool was warm. The night was quiet. We were floating in that strange, intimate silence when something caught my eye. Through the large glass windows facing the pool, I could see directly into my living room. The lights were on inside, and someone was walking. I froze. MJ saw my expression. She turned and looked. We both saw it. A clear silhouette moving past the hallway, visible only because of the light inside. It wasn't a trick of the light. It wasn't a shadow. It was someone. My heart began to race. I signaled MJ to move to the pool house quietly. She nodded, her face pale. I got out, wrapped a towel around myself, and grabbed the first thing I could from the outdoor kitchen. A knife. I crept toward the house. Every door was locked. No broken windows, no sign of forced entry. But there were subtle signs. A photo frame tilted, a chair that had been moved slightly, a coffee cup on the table that I didn't use. Somebody had been inside. I called the cops. They arrived, did a full sweep. Nothing. "Maybe he ran off when he saw you coming," one of them said casually. But I knew it wasn't random. It felt planned, deliberate, like someone had been watching us. That night, MJ and I locked ourselves in the bedroom. Around 4 a.m., I woke up to the sound of footsteps. Slow, deliberate, coming from the stairs. I held my breath. When I stepped outside the room with the knife, I found the front door slightly open. I looked outside. Nothing. Not a soul. But the cold breeze carried something else. A presence. The next morning, I noticed all the kitchen knives were gone. My laptop too. But the knives, that wasn't theft. That was a message. A warning. Night 2. The man in the lounge months passed. I was now attending Rowan University. Things felt normal again. Until Holly Bash. Holly Bash was our campus's spring music festival. A mini Coachella with lights, music, and way too much alcohol. That night, I stayed out a little later than usual. Around 2:30 a.m., I was walking back to Chestnut Hall. I'd heard rumors lately. People saying they'd seen masked figures around campus. Some claimed they'd seen guys on bikes knocking on random dorm doors in the middle of the night. Just rumors. Or so I thought. When I entered my dorm, I passed the main lounge. And there, sitting alone under the dim emergency light, was a man. He was wearing a full ski mask. He didn't move. He didn't say anything. He was just staring. I stopped mid-step. My skin crawled. I pretended not to notice him and walked toward the bathroom. Locked myself in. Waited. After a few minutes, I peeked out. The hallway was empty. I walked toward the stairs, thinking maybe I imagined it. But when I passed the lounge again, he was still there, sitting, watching. This time I noticed something else. A bike leaning against the wall, and a chair wedged under the lounge door, placed like it was blocking someone from getting out. Or in. I grabbed my pepper spray from my keychain, kept my head down, and walked past him slowly. He didn't move, didn't speak, didn't blink. I made it outside and started walking fast. That's when I noticed the other three. 3 masked guys on bikes coming from the shadows. They didn't speak either. They just began following me. Slowly at first, then laughing. One of them pointed something. A fake gun, maybe. But in that moment, it didn't matter. I ran to a friend's dorm, Magnolia Hall, and banged on the door until he let me in. That night, I didn't sleep. Later, I learned that those guys had threatened students with real weapons. It wasn't a prank. It wasn't random. They knew who to follow, who would be walking alone, who looked easy to trap. Night 3. The man who asked for her parents. Summer came. My girlfriend at the time, Amanda, threw a party at her place. Her parents were out of town, and the house was massive. People came in waves. Loud music, open drinks, pool games, all the usual stuff. But there was one guest I didn't want. There, Pete. Pete was annoying, clingy, always hovering around Amanda. So I made a plan. Get him drunk enough to pass out and disappear. It worked. By midnight, Pete was out cold in the basement, and Amanda and I had a quiet moment upstairs. But then, out of nowhere, she turned serious. "You planned that, didn't you?" she asked. She wasn't smiling. We had a small argument. She stormed off to her room. I stepped outside to cool down, and that's when I saw him. A man standing by the fence, halfway cloaked in shadows. He wasn't moving, just staring. I approached him slowly. "Can I help you?" I asked. He tilted his head. "Are Amanda's parents home?" I blinked. "Excuse me?" he asked again. But this time, he said their names, first and last. Chills ran down my spine. I lied. "Yes, they're inside." He didn't say a word, just stared, and then turned, disappearing into the dark. 5 minutes later, the doorbell rang. Amanda had specifically told everyone to come in through the back entrance. No one was supposed to use the front. I opened the door. It was Bella, another guest, drunk and confused. "There was this old man," she mumbled. "He let me in. Said he knew the family." I looked past her. The front door was slightly ajar. Basement lights were flickering. I rushed down. Pete was still asleep, but something felt wrong. I kept hearing faint creaks, a soft thud upstairs, whispers, or the sound of shifting feet. People started leaving one by one. The vibe was shattered. Something was off. That man had known Amanda's parents. He knew they weren't home. He knew the house, and he'd gotten in somehow. He didn't steal anything. He didn't break anything. He just watched, then left. 3 nights, 3 warnings. Each one was different. Each one was real. And each one taught me something I'll never forget. Sometimes, the scariest thing isn't what breaks in. It's what waits, watches, and leaves no trace. You may not notice the footsteps right away or the shadow behind the glass, but when you do, it's already too late.